American Fugitive by Shingo Zhang. Chapter 25 Shu-Fen. Outside of Donghai nightclub, Luo Yanfang asked Ren-Yee, "What is the relationship between us?" Ren-Yee did not reply. She turned and left. He hurried over and took her hand. "Our relationship is between us. Other people don't need to know." She did not speak. Ren-Yee smiled. "Aren't we brother and sister?" Yanfang smiled back and hugged him. He said, "Sun Pei-Wen is really hard to talk with. Can you set up a time with him, so we can talk to him tomorrow?" "I don't know if he will. We'll see." Her voice was flat as if she had lost interest. Yanfang hoped very much that Ren-Yee could love her as much she loved him. But she knew that was out of her control. She didn't know where her fate would take her. After saying goodbye to each other, the two went home in separate ways. Ren-Yee returned to his parents-in-law's home. In the living room, his mother-in-law Shu-Fen asked, "Where have you been all day?" Ren-Yee said, "I've seen some friends." "Whom did you see?" "Middle school classmates." Ren-Yee knew that Mrs. Jean hardly knew any of his middle school classmates, and he hoped that she would have no interest in their names. "Who are they?" Ren-Yee hesitated. Inventing stories as time went, he said the names of two middle school classmates, Tian Daomin and Lu Jinhua. She was suspicious of the names, and wanted to continue to ask questions. But Ren-Yee turned and went to his bedroom. Once there, Ren-Yee called Lu Dingfeng, and briefly talked about the meeting with Sun Pei-Wen. Lu Dingfeng asked, "Will he report us to the authorities?" "He promised not to. He has declined, which makes it more difficult," Ren-Yee said. "I hope he will change his mind tomorrow." Lu Dingfeng paused. Then he said, "Let's keep in touch." "Okay, bye." Ren-Yee lay down on his bed. What should I do? If Jin Yong-Shee encountered this situation, she would pray. "Yes, I will pray." An hour later, Luo Yanfang called. She said, "I persuaded Sun Pei-Wen, and he agreed." Ren-Yee was overjoyed. "Really? Really?" she said proudly. "How did you convince him? He also has a relative who suffered in the persecution wave after Lin Biao incident, although he said he didn't at the nightclub. I will come and give you the cassette. I happen to be near Wuhan University. I can come to your place." "Come here? Come to see my parents-in-law?" Ren-Yee asked. "Where are you?" "It's very convenient for me since I drive." "Where do you live?" The fact that his mother-in-law was suspicious of his whereabouts an hour ago made Ren-Yee hesitant. "Do you know the Free Space restaurant?" "It's on Zwadequan North Road." "Never heard of it." "You tell me your address. I'll wait for you downstairs." "Why don't we meet at Chua Hotel?" "It's on Bei Road." "Very easy to see." She thought for a while, and then said, "That's good. Let's meet there." He put on a jacket, made sure the cassette was in his pocket, and left the room. When he reached the apartment door, and was about to open it, Mrs. Jean walked into the living room and asked, "Going out at such a late hour?" "I'm taking a walk." "Where are you going?" "Just walking around." "It's 11 o'clock now. Don't go out." "It's okay. Mom. I'll be careful when I come back. I won't disturb your sleep." Without waiting for approval, Ren-Yee walked out of the apartment and closed the door gently. Ren-Yee walked to Chua Hotel. Few cars were on the road, and no pedestrian were on the streets. Ren-Yee recognized Luo Yanfang's car in the parking lot. With a few big trees blocking the street lights, the parking lot was relatively dark. Yanfang's car was beige, and stood out even in the dark. Ren-Yee walked to the car and entered through the passenger door. Inside the car, Ren-Yee said excitedly, "You are really great." Yanfang shrugged and said nothing. "Thank you very much." Ren-Yee took out an envelope containing the cassette from his pocket. "Don't give me the audio cassette," Yanfang said. "Why not?" "I have a few questions for you," Ren-Yee asked with a bewildered look. "What are your questions?" "This endeavor is very risky to Sun Pei-Wen and me. We could all be sent to jail. Our lives could be over. Ren-Yee didn't reply. Have you thought about that? Ren-Yee said in a low voice. I know. What if we were caught? Lots of people would come out to rescue you. Many of the people who were persecuted because of Lin Biao's case are still alive. We would take care of your children and help your parents. Is that all? He said. Of course there are other things. We will do our best. Yan-Fang turned her face to look outside. She stared at the things in front of the car, trees, fence, and the street beyond. She said, I did it all for you. Ren-Yee said, I know. She turned to him and asked, Then how will you repay me? I don't know. She turned her head and stared outside again. Tears began to fill her eyes. He took her right hand and caressed it. She still looked forward. He raised her hand and kissed it gently. She said, Let's get a room in the hotel. He knew what get a room meant. She liked him a lot, and that made him happy. He knew that Jin Yong-Shee would never admire him like Yan-Fang did. However, can a man's self-esteem rely upon a woman who worships him? If that were the case, wouldn't I still a loser? He asked himself. Ren-Yee only thought of this question last night. He said, No. I am going back to the United States soon. Get out. Looks like I need to find someone else to contact Sun Peiwen, or contact him myself. With that in mind, Ren-Yee opened the passenger side door, only to hear Yan-Fang's screaming voice. What happened? There is a person out there. Yan-Fang pointed at a tree in front of the car. Both of them walked out and stared at the tree. Moments later, someone walked between two trees. Ren-Yee was speechless when he realized the person was his mother-in-law. Based on Ren-Yee's reaction, Yan-Fang immediately knew who the person was. Both Ren-Yee and Yan-Fang bowed their heads and were silent, as if they were children waiting to be reprimanded because they had done something wrong. Mrs. Jin asked Ren-Yee, Who is she? He didn't reply. Yan-Fang turned away from Mrs. Jin. Mrs. Jin asked again, Who is she? He said, She is Luo Yan-Fang. She is Song Huimin's friend. What is the relationship between the two of you? He didn't reply. He knew that Yan-Fang would be very upset if he said, We are just friends. Where are you going? To the hotel to get a room? Ren-Yee wanted to comfort Yan-Fang before leaving with his mother-in-law. But he struggled at coming up with the right words for Mrs. Jin. Don't you go to church every week? Does this conform to God's teachings? He didn't reply. Mrs. Jin was angry. Talk to me, Yan-Fang said. I'm leaving. She opened the car door and entered. Ren-Yee opened the passenger door and said, Wait a minute. At the same time, he took out a paper bag in his pocket and handed it to Yan-Fang. Please help. Mrs. Jin asked Ren-Yee, What did you give to her? Yan-Fang got out of the car and asked Mrs. Jin, Aren't you stepping over your boundaries? Mrs. Jin walked to Ren-Yee. Let me take a look. Ren-Yee did not give the paper bag to his mother-in-law. He said, It's not a big deal. You don't need to worry about it. Yan-Fang ran to Ren-Yee's side and kissed his cheek. Mrs. Jin felt insulted. Seeing Ren-Yee standing stiffly there, Mrs. Jin told Ren-Yee, We are Christians. We are different from her. Yan-Fang said. He was not baptized. Mrs. Jin was speechless and grew angrier. She said, Fortunately, I only came by myself. If Mr. Jin also came, he would definitely be outraged. Ren-Yee walked to his mother-in-law. You go home first. I'll be back soon, Mrs. Jin said. You will go home with me now, Ren-Yee said. I will take you home. Yan-Fang told Ren-Yee in a casual tone. I'm leaving. Ren-Yee immediately said, Wait here. I'll be back soon. He turned around and told Mrs. Jin, Let's go. Mrs. Jin was quite exhausted and wanted to go home and rest. Ren-Yee took his mother-in-law's hand and started walking home. Yan-Fang ran toward Ren-Yee and made a hand gesture to him. Ren-Yee stopped, took the paper bag out of his pocket, and gave it to Yan-Fang. Mrs. Jin asked, Is that yours or hers? Ren-Yee didn't reply. Yanfang pointed her finger at the car behind her. Ren-Yee nodded. In a different part of the city, Xiao Zichang and a group of people were drinking and singing in a nightclub. Xiao Zichang walked out of the room to go to a men's room. He encountered Boss Chu in the corridor, who said, "Director Xiao! It's been a long time," Xiao Zichang said casually. Boss Chu moved closer and whispered, "Director Xiao, I ran into Luo Yanfang and Ho Ren-Yee in Wanjin Hotel at noon today." Xiao Zichang's face froze. "Director Xiao, I'm just passing this information to you, and nothing else. Ho Ren-Yee may leave soon. Before he leaves, you should teach him a lesson," Xiao Zichang said. "When will he leave? I'll send someone to check." Xiao Zichang waved a hand and left. On the way home, Ren-Yee explained the situation to his mother-in-law. Mrs. Jean calmed down temporarily. At home, Mrs. Jean returned to the master bedroom to sleep. Ho Ren-Yee once again returned to the Chua Hotel parking lot. Ren-Yee looked tired. Yanfang got out of the car and hugged him. He said, "What if the old lady died because of her outrage? Have you thought about that?" She still held him and said softly, "She should not have spied." He pushed her away. "When will you give the cassette to Sun Peiwen? He wants me to bring it over tonight." "Then you should go quickly. It's so late." "You still want me to go?" "It's better to give it to him now." The two hugged. Yanfang got in her car and drove away. Ren-Yee went home. In the morning, Ho Ren-Yee was doing some warm-up exercises in the living room when Mr. Jean came home from a morning walk. Mr. Jean said, "Your injuries are not healed yet. Don't force it." Ren-Yee stopped. Mr. Jean put his hand on Ren-Yee's shoulder. "No rush. Don't worry. Mom hasn't gotten up yet? She was too tired yesterday. She needs to sleep a little longer today." It seems that she did not tell him what happened last night. Ren-Yee felt relieved inside. He said, "I will leave Wuhan today and go back to the United States. Have you bought the plane ticket?" "Not yet. I will buy it online." "When is the flight?" "Have not decided yet. I will fly to Beijing first, and then decide what the next flight is." Ren-Yee's plan was actually to fly from Wuhan to Qingdao at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then fly from Qingdao to Seoul, South Korea at 7 o'clock in the evening. At Seoul, he would figure out what flight to take to get back to San Francisco. No one else knew his plan. He certainly would not tell his parents-in-law. He felt a little sorry for lying to his family, but he had no other choice, because he had to minimize the risk. "I can lie effortlessly?" When did that happen? After learning that Ren-Yee would leave in the morning, Mrs. Jean came to Ren-Yee's room alone. Ren-Yee was packing his luggage. Mrs. Jean sat on a chair next to a wall, and told Ren-Yee to sit down. Ren-Yee sat on the bed. Mrs. Jean whispered, "What did you do last night with that Luo woman?" "We chatted. Then I came home." "Just chatted?" "Yes." Mrs. Jean stared at Ren-Yee. Ren-Yee slowly turned his head to the gray sky outside the window. He knew that the old lady had definitely been awake when he finally came home the previous night. However, Ren-Yee's face did not reveal anything. Mrs. Jean kept staring at him. She could not be certain whether he was telling the truth, so she gave up. Mrs. Jean asked, "You gave a small paper bag to Luo last night. What's in it?" Ren-Yee said, "It's nothing." "Is it the audio cassette for the cockpit?" Ren-Yee was surprised. When Lin Jianhan, Lin Jianyou, and Ho Ren-Yee were wanted in the city, the audio tape were not mentioned on television. Ren-Yee didn't know where his mother-in-law had heard about the audio tape. Ren-Yee said, "Please don't spend time thinking about these things," Mrs. Jean said loudly. "I'm not that old yet. Why do you hide information from me?" Ren-Yee said carefully, "Don't be too loud. Dad could hear it." "He can't hear it. It doesn't matter." That reminded Ren-Yee Mr. Jean had a hearing problem. Ren-Yee was about to say, "Don't ask," when Mr. Jean walked into the room. "Mr. Jean asked, What secret are you discussing? Mrs. Jean was surprised, but she immediately returned to calm and said, Nothing. Mr. Jean continued, What were you talking about? Mrs. Jean remembered the gift she had prepared for her granddaughter. I asked what gift we should give Tsai-Hua. Mr. Jean said, Didn't you have it already? Mrs. Jean said, Go get the gift. Mr. Jean left the room. Mrs. Jean said, Ren-Yee, you are a good child. I believe you. You must not go astray. Ren-Yee nodded seriously. Mom, don't worry. Ren-Yee bid farewell to his parents-in-law at the apartment door. Later, with a suitcase in one hand, he entered Wanjin Hotel. After putting his suitcase in temporary storage at Wanjin, he bought an airline ticket while waiting for Yanfang's call.